Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Please consider subscribing and check out our Patreon for more. Enjoy the video. Randy pulled his car up to the curb outside Jessica's house. He cut the engine and sat for a moment, looking up at the two-story colonial with its black shutters and blooming flower boxes. Spring had arrived early this year, blanketing the neighborhood in a sea of pink and white blossoms. With a sigh, Randy opened the door and headed up the brick walkway. He hadn't seen Jessica in almost 6 months, not since her wedding last fall. She'd married Amy in a beautiful outdoor ceremony, surrounded by friends and family. Randy remembered how radiant Jessica had looked that day, absolutely glowing in her ivory gown. He rang the bell and waited, listening to the faint sound of wind chimes hanging on the porch. After a few moments, he heard footsteps approaching and the door swung open. "Randy," Jessica greeted him with a brilliant smile. She pulled him into a tight hug. "It's so good to see you." Jessica led him inside to the living room, brightly lit by sunshine streaming through large bay windows. The walls were painted a cheerful yellow and adorned with framed photographs. Wedding photos, vacation shots, candid snaps with friends. "Can I get you something to drink?" Jessica asked. "Iced tea, lemonade?" "Iced tea would be great, thanks," Randy said, settling onto the sofa. Jessica disappeared into the kitchen, returning a few minutes later with 2 tall glasses of tea garnished with mint and lemon. She curled up in the armchair across from Randy and took a long sip. "So, how have you been?" she asked. "I want to hear all about what you've been up to." Randy smiled, though he felt a pang in his chest. It had been hard adjusting to life without Jessica. They dated all through college, even talked of marriage at one point. But after graduation, they'd drifted apart. Jessica had met Amy not long after and fallen head over heels in love. Randy was happy for her, truly, but he missed the closeness they'd once shared. "Oh, same old stuff," Randy said with a shrug. "Work's been busy, and I started taking guitar lessons a few months ago. Turns out I'm terrible, but it's fun anyway." Jessica laughed. "I'm sure you'll get the hang of it. You were always musically inclined." "Yeah, maybe in another lifetime," Randy joked. He studied Jessica over the rim of his glass. She looked tired, the skin under her eyes tinged gray. Her long auburn hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail rather than styled in the intricate braids she usually wore. "What about you?" Randy asked. "How are things with you and Amy?" Jessica's gaze dropped to her lap. She traced her finger around the lip of her glass. "Things are good," she said quietly. Randy frowned. Jessica's hesitation spoke volumes. He and Jessica had been friends for over a decade. He could tell when something was off. "Jess, what's going on?" he prodded gently. "You know you can talk to me about anything." Jessica chewed her lip, seeming to wrestle with indecision. Finally, she looked up and met Randy's eyes. "I think Amy might be cheating on me," she said bluntly. Randy rocked back against the cushions, stunned. That was the last thing he'd expected her to say. "What? Why do you think that?" he asked. Jessica sighed heavily. "Little things, mostly. She's been working late a lot more, and when I ask about it, she gets evasive. I've called her office in the evenings, and they said she'd already left. She's always texting, but hides her phone from me. The other night, I woke up and she wasn't in bed. When she came back, she said she'd just been downstairs watching TV, but the TV wasn't even on." She shook her head, looking on the verge of tears. "I don't have any real proof. But in my gut, I just know something's going on. Amy's pulling away from me emotionally, too. She's shut down, distant. We've hardly—" Jessica broke off and blushed. "Anyway," she mumbled, "let's just say we've grown apart intimately. More and more it feels like Amy would rather be anywhere but home with me." Randy's pulse pounded in his ears. He felt simultaneously furious at Amy and heartsick for Jessica. They'd only been married 6 months, for God's sake. "Jess, I'm so sorry," he said helplessly. What could he possibly say to make things better? Jessica wiped hastily at her eyes. "For all I know, I'm being paranoid, jumping to conclusions, but I can't shake this awful feeling that I'm losing her." Her voice broke on the last few words. Randy abandoned his chair to sit beside her on the sofa. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders. You have solid reasons to worry, he assured her. I know Amy. She's not the type to suddenly start working late for no reason, and you know her better than anyone. If you sense something's wrong, it probably is. Jessica leaned into him, sniffling. I just feel so stupid. I was so sure she was the one, you know. Thought we'd be together forever. Now it's like the past 6 months have been one big lie. This isn't your fault, Jess, Randy said firmly. You didn't do anything wrong. If Amy's cheating, that's on her. Jessica didn't reply. They sat in silence for several long moments. Randy's mind spun as he tried to process this bombshell. He'd never imagined Amy capable of such deceit. She'd always seemed so devoted, so in love. Had it all been an act? Finally, Jessica sat up and dried her eyes. I'm sorry for unloading all this on you, she said with an embarrassed laugh. Some welcome, huh? But I'm glad I told you. I haven't wanted to worry my family yet without knowing more. I'm glad you told me too, Randy said. I'll always be here if you need someone to lean on. Jessica smiled sadly. You're a good friend, Randy. She stood and gathered their empty glasses. More tea? No thanks, I'm good. Jessica disappeared into the kitchen. When she returned, she perched on the edge of the sofa and twisted her hands together, seeming to gather her nerve. Can I ask you something? She said hesitantly. Of course, anything, Randy replied. If it turns out Amy is cheating, would you help me catch her? Randy recoiled. You mean like follow her, spy on her? I know, it sounds crazy, Jessica said in a rush. But I can't move forward without knowing the truth. If I confront Amy, she'll just deny it. I need evidence, something concrete. She gazed at Randy beseechingly. You're the only one I trust enough to ask. But if you're uncomfortable with the idea, just say so. I'll understand. Randy's conscience railed against the notion of ambushing Amy. It felt underhanded, indecent. But how else would Jessica get closure? And wasn't it Amy who'd violated decency first by betraying her marriage vows? I want to help you get answers, Randy said slowly. But we have to be smart about this. No rash decisions. Of course, Jessica agreed. We'll just do some light surveillance. Follow Amy, see where she goes after work, who she talks to. If it seems like she's sneaking around, we dig deeper. If not, then I guess I have to accept I was wrong. She clasped Randy's hand, her eyes brimming with fresh tears. Thank you, she whispered. I know I'm asking a lot, but I can't face this alone. Randy squeezed her hand. You don't have to. I'll be with you every step of the way. Randy stared at Jessica, certain he had misheard. You want me to do what? He asked incredulously. Jessica twisted her hands in her lap, not quite meeting his eye. I know it sounds crazy, she said, but hear me out. If Amy sees us following her, she'll know something's up. But if you're in disguise, she won't recognize you. Jessica's voice grew more excited as she warmed to the idea. My friend Edie owns a salon downtown. She could style you a wig, do your makeup. With the right clothes, no one would guess you weren't a woman. Randy's pulse roared in his ears. Trying to find the truth was one thing, but actually dressing up as a woman, the suggestion was ludicrous, insane. Yet Jessica gazed at him with such desperation, such fragile hope. Randy knew if he refused, it would crush her. Still, the scheme made him profoundly uneasy. Jess, I want to help, but this... He faltered, grasping for a tactful objection. Don't you think it's a little extreme? Jessica's face fell. You're right, it was stupid of me to ask, she mumbled. Forget I mentioned it. Randy's chest clenched at her dejected tone. She looked so lost, so afraid of losing Amy. If disguising himself eased that pain even a little, how could he say no? I didn't say I wouldn't do it, Randy said gently. Just that we should think it through. Jessica's head snapped up, eyes shining. So you'll consider it? Randy took a deep breath. Yes, he said. I'll do it. Jessica threw her arms around him. Thank you, Randy, she whispered. You're a real friend. Doubt still gnawed at Randy as he bid Jessica goodbye and climbed into his car. What had he gotten himself into? The idea of parading around as a woman made him cringe, but Jessica was like family. If playing dress-up got her the truth, so be it. Randy arrived at Edie's salon early the next morning. Jessica had called ahead, spinning some story about Randy being an actor who needed a disguise. Edie had eagerly agreed to help. "Don't you worry, honey," the stylist said as she sized Randy up. "When I'm done, your own mama won't know you." Randy gulped. That was exactly what he was afraid of. The makeover was lengthy and invasive. First came foundation, blush, contouring to soften his jawline, eyeshadow, mascara, false lashes, lipstick in a rich wine shade. Randy barely recognized himself in the mirror, but that was only the beginning. Edie fitted a long auburn wig to his head. The glossy fake hair cascaded past his shoulders. "What do you think?" Edie asked. Randy stared at this new feminine version of himself. "It's unnerving, mortifying. Very believable," he finished diplomatically. The final step was an elegant black jersey dress paired with low heels. Randy teetered unsteadily as he examined the finished product. Edie clapped her hands. "You look fabulous, darling. No one would ever suspect you aren't a natural beauty." Randy managed a weak smile. "Thanks, Edie. You've got real talent." And with that, he fled the salon into the safety of his car. Peeling out of the parking lot, he caught his reflection in the rearview mirror. The made-up green eyes staring back jolted him all over again. Randy knew he should head straight to Jessica's. They were supposed to trail Amy during her lunch break and see where she went. But Randy couldn't stand the thought of Jessica seeing him like this. Bad enough he had to parade around town in drag. Having his oldest friend witness his humiliation might push him over the edge. Instead, Randy drove aimlessly, winding through neighborhoods far from his own. He parked along a quiet residential street lined with manicured hedges. "What am I doing?" he thought desperately. This whole scheme suddenly seemed absurd, childish, not to mention sexist. Did they really believe Amy wouldn't recognize Randy beneath the makeup and wig? That all women looked alike to her? A wave of shame washed over Randy. He should march straight back to Edie's, scrub off this costume, and tell Jessica he refused to go through with it. But something stopped him. Jessica had seemed so hopeful, so relieved that Randy would help. This plan, foolish as it was, felt like her last lifeline. If Randy backed out now, he feared she might unravel completely. And wasn't his own curiosity piqued despite his discomfort? If Amy was cheating, Randy had to know, for Jessica's sake and for his own peace of mind. With a defeated sigh, Randy pulled down the visor mirror. He reapplied his smeared lipstick and fluffed the synthetic hair. Then he put the car in drive and headed for Jessica's. Time to get this over with. Jessica's eyes popped when she opened the door. For a moment, she just stared. Randy shifted awkwardly. "Well, will I pass inspection?" he asked, trying to make light of the situation. Jessica studied Randy. No, Miranda, up and down. "The wig looks so real, it's incredible," she marveled, reaching out to brush her fingers over the long synthetic locks. "And the makeup? Edie really is an artist." Miranda shifted self-consciously under Jessica's intent gaze. Though Jessica had styled Miranda as a woman, her oldest friend still saw the man beneath. A man currently wearing an itchy wig, teetering in heels, and slathered in products that suffocated his skin. "Yeah, Edie did a great job," Miranda said, voice strained. "Shall we go over the plan again?" Jessica nodded, snapping back to business. "Amy's firm is hosting a client reception this evening, cocktails, hors d'oeuvres, the usual schmoozing. I called to get you added to the guest list as Miranda Smith, an old college friend of Amy's." Jessica rummaged through her purse and extracted a driver's license. She'd somehow fabricated an ID with Miranda's picture. "I figure Amy won't remember everyone from her alumni days. Just say you two were in a sorority together or something. Once you're inside, keep an eye on her interactions. See if she gets overly friendly with anyone." Jessica's voice hardened. "And if you catch her flirting or sneaking off with someone, get evidence. Photos, audio, anything you can." Miranda's gut churned. This subterfuge felt so deceitful, so underhanded, but Jessica was trusting Miranda to uncover the truth, whatever it may be. "I'll be discreet," Miranda promised. "With any luck, this will give us the answers we need." Jessica's eyes misted over. "I know I'm asking a lot, but I can't lose Amy without knowing for sure." She hugged Miranda tightly. "Thank you for everything." Miranda returned the embrace, keenly aware of the ridiculous image they presented. Jessica clinging to her supposed female friend, oblivious to the fraud beneath the facade. With a final wish of luck, Jessica sent Miranda on her way. Miranda pointed the car toward downtown, pulse thrumming. It was time to crash a party. The reception was held in a swanky event space on the top floor of Amy's office building. Miranda rode the elevator up, smoothing imaginary wrinkles from her dress. At the entrance, she gave her assumed name. The attendant scanned the guest list and waved Miranda inside with a polite smile. So far, so good. Miranda hovered near the doors, getting her bearings. Round tables dotted the room, surrounded by laughing, mingling guests. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne and canapes. A banner overhead read, "Welcome, valued clients," and there was Amy. She stood across the room, looking radiant in a curve-hugging red dress. Miranda watched as she worked the crowd, clasping hands, kissing cheeks, flashing her $1,000,000 smile. The perfect hostess. Miranda grabbed a flute of champagne from a passing waiter and edged further into the party. Time to kick this espionage into gear. Weaving among the clusters of guests, Miranda kept Amy in her peripheral vision at all times. She seemed friendly, yet professional, as she chatted with two older gentlemen, likely clients. Miranda inched nearer, straining to overhear their conversation. "So thrilled you could attend tonight," Amy was saying. "Please enjoy yourselves. My team is here to answer any questions you may have." The men thanked her, and Amy moved to greet more attendees. Nothing overtly suspicious so far. Miranda spent the next half hour subtly shadowing Amy from a distance. Amy socialized with guests of all ages, both men and women. She laughed, posed for photos, shook hands. Her body language appeared engaged, yet respectful. After a time, Miranda's nerves settled. Perhaps she'd read too much into Jessica's suspicions. Amy seemed to harbor no hidden agendas with these clients. Then a tall, handsome man caught Amy's eye from across the room. Her face lit up, and she excused herself from her current conversation. Miranda watched Amy weave through the crowd toward the stranger. They embraced, a bit too long and close for Miranda's comfort. As they chatted, the man laid a familiar hand on Amy's lower back. Amy didn't recoil. On the contrary, she gazed up at him with unconcealed warmth. Miranda's pulse quickened. Red flags blared in her mind. This interaction had just crossed from friendly to flirtatious. Setting her drink aside, Miranda maneuvered closer. She pretended to examine a nearby abstract sculpture, angling an ear toward Amy and the mystery man. Their voices floated over the din. "So glad you made it, Rob," Amy was saying. "I've missed our working lunches." The man, Rob, chuckled. "Well, we'll have to reinstate those. What's your schedule look like next week?" Miranda's stomach plummeted. Working lunches sounded like they were well acquainted outside a professional capacity. Amy toyed with her necklace, still grinning up at Rob. "I'm sure I could squeeze you in. Some things are worth making time for." Miranda's fists clenched. The flirtatious tone, the starving gazes, something untoward was definitely brewing between these two. They exchanged cell numbers and final lingering touches before parting ways. Miranda shadowed Rob from afar and managed to snap some discreet photos. She would run facial recognition software later to identify him. For the remainder of the evening, Miranda continued mingling, keeping one eye on Amy. More than once, she noticed Amy casually scanning the room as if looking for someone. Guessing who? Near the end of the reception, Miranda found herself engaged in conversation with a kind older woman who turned out to be a client of Amy's firm. "Amy is just the loveliest young woman," the lady was saying. "So warm, so dedicated. You can tell she truly cares about her clients." Miranda plastered on a smile, even as bitterness flooded her mouth. If this woman only knew how Amy cared for certain male clients in particular. "She's always been that way," Miranda said vaguely. "A real people person." The woman beamed. "So wonderful to meet one of her old friends. I'm sure you have all sorts of stories about your college days." Miranda's mind raced. She hadn't prepared any fabricated backstory. but the woman gazed at her expectantly, awaiting tales of youthful misadventures. "Oh, we got into our fair share of trouble," Miranda said, hoping a broad statement would satisfy. "But Amy was always the responsible one keeping everyone in line." The woman laughed. "Why does that not surprise me? She's so dedicated now, I'm sure she was a regular mother hen back then." Miranda joined politely in the laughter. Inwardly, she cringed at the deceit required to maintain this charade as Amy's supposed friend. She couldn't wait to scrub off her makeup and return to being plain old Randy. But the woman seemed tickled by the conversation, which she took as proof of Amy's sterling character. With a final squeeze of Miranda's arm, the lady wandered off to refresh her drink. Miranda checked her watch, nearly time to leave. She felt equal parts relieved and disappointed. Relieved to shed this uncomfortable disguise, yet disappointed not to have uncovered concrete proof of Amy's betrayal. Miranda hovered by the reception exit, watching the last of the guests trickle out. It had been an illuminating yet exhausting evening. She was more than ready to return home and scrub off her makeup. Yet despite her eagerness to shed this costume, Miranda couldn't ignore the tiny part of herself that felt an odd reluctance to let go of her new identity. Though the circumstances were stressful, Miranda had experienced moments of undeniable thrill while embodying this female persona. Like when the bartender, normally gruff and indifferent, had given her a dazzling smile along with her champagne. "You look lovely this evening," he'd said with a wink. Or when Miranda had needed to excuse herself to the ladies' room. The other women had readily chatted and giggled with her, complimenting her dress and shoes. They'd automatically accepted her as one of their own. And just now, saying her goodbyes to Amy's sweet older client. The woman had clasped Miranda's hand warmly, telling her how nice it was to make a new friend. Usually invisible or overlooked in his normal masculine presentation, Miranda had felt seen, appreciated, admired even. It was equal parts empowering and disarming. Despite the late hour, the sidewalks bustled with life. Groups of women strode by in cocktail attire, their laughter rising above the city din. Miranda garnered her share of appreciative glances at her slim silhouette and the swish of her dress. Heading toward the parking garage, Miranda deliberated taking the long way around. She was in no hurry to shed this dress, wash away the makeup and false lashes. The night was still young, after all. Perhaps she could stop for a nightcap at some lively lounge. "You're being ridiculous," Miranda scolded herself. This dress-up facade was only ever meant as a disguise, a means to an end. It would be reckless to prolong it and risk being recognized. But even as her logical side argued for calling it a night, Miranda felt the inexorable pull to let her new persona live just a little while longer. Thanks for watching. Check out Patreon if you want to have early access to the other parts. If not, it will be online in a couple of days.